All right, so our next phylum in the tour de phyla is the phylum Platyhelminthes. Platyhelminthes. It's one of my favorite phyla just because of the name, and this includes the flatworms. That is a planarian, not to scale. So, Platyhelminthes or flatworms are the largest group of acoelomates. You should recall from our first month of class that an acoelomate does not actually have a body cavity. It's just solid tissue from the body wall all the way to the gut. They're flat, very much like a pancake. They exhibit bilateral symmetry. Therefore, they have an anterior at the front of the organism. Here's the posterior. The dorsal is the back, and the ventral is the underside. Some of us still don't know that. This is the first group to exhibit cephalization. I know this is in green, but you're going to want to write this down. Cephalization is basically, can you point to an animal's head? It's a definite head area at the anterior end. This is where there's a collection of nerve tissue, maybe some sensory organs. Not all of the flatworms have this, but it's the first group that actually exhibits cephalization. These organisms do have tissues, and their level of organization goes up to organs. They have very simple organs, not like a complex heart or, liver or anything like that, but they're very simple. The majority of these are hermaphrodites. Remember, it's an advantage to be a hermaphrodite if you're rare, like you rarely run into members of your own species. So they still cannot self-fertilize, asterisk. The tapeworm can, but we'll get to that in a second. So they do need to meet another member of their species, but instead of just one being fertilized and having offspring, both of them are capable, so they double their reproductive chances. There's no skeletal system, no support system. They all live in water or a watery environment, and they're incredibly small, so they don't really need one. That planarian sketch that you just saw is about the length of your fingernail. The tapeworm lives in a gut, doesn't need a support system, and all the other ones live in water, so they don't need a support system either. There's no circulatory or respiratory system. They don't have blood, and they can get oxygen through diffusion. They have a gastrovascular cavity, but it's a little more evolved. And what happens is it's highly branched, and we're going to look at this when we do our labs and investigate these things a little more closely. But that gastrovascular cavity has a lot of branches that can reach almost all the tissues, except in tapeworms. They're kind of a special case. We'll talk about them in a little more detail. But that allows food to diffuse to just about every single cell through that gastrovascular cavity. So it's still a one-opening system. Food comes in one opening, and waste goes back out via that mouth tube that you kind of saw in the previous sketch. Said that, nutrients diffuse from the gastrovascular cavity to the cells, and most of the cells are in contact with that gastrovascular cavity. All right, there are 3 classes. You don't need to jot these down just yet because we're going to have them at the top of each slide, but they are Turbellaria, Cestota, and Trematota. So this is a marine flatworm. And that same sketch of the planarian. Again, that's what it looks like in real life. So all that really red stuff isn't blood. That's that highly branched gastrovascular cavity. They have eye spots, but they really only sense light or dark. They can't actually see. So the Turbellaria are free-living aquatic flatworms, free-living. Therefore, they are non-parasitic, so you don't have to be scared of these. Almost all of them are those ones from the first slide. They're marine flatworms, so most of them are ocean dwellers. They're very rare. You saw from the video, they come in all bright different colors. They have interesting mating rituals. Again, as we know from the video from that flatworm lady, they're pretty hard to come across, and so we don't really study those. We just kind of watch them in videos and learn about them, and these biological supply companies can't raise them in captivity for us to keep, so instead we study freshwater planarians, which are of members of the genus Digesia, and so those are the ones we're going to look at. And here are the marine flatworms gearing up to mate. I was going to tell you about the planarian. So let's go back just for a smidge. Don't worry. Okay, so take a look at that. Imagine, if you will, you're lying on your stomach. Your eyes are on the top of your head. They can't really see anything. They just sense light or dark or over like shadows passing overhead. And where your belly button is would be that pharynx, that mouth tube, and that's how you eat, and that's your existence. Okay, back to where we were. There's the planarian on in like little rocks in a stream. They're like I said, they're freshwater, about the length of your fingernail. All right, next are the cestota. These are the tapeworms. Tapeworms are typically named by the that was my dog. Typically named by the vertebrate that they infest. So like beef, pork, fish. They are most common invertebrates, and they are parasitic. They have a unique system to be able to stay in the gut. On their head are a system of hooks and suckers, and they burrow into the intestinal wall because, things flow through the intestine, and it's constant movement of food material, and they will be passed out with waste if they didn't have a way to attach. So that's where they anchor those hooks and suckers. Their body consists of a head, which is a scolex, that's where the hooks and suckers are, and hundreds of proglottids, which are body sections. And if you look in this diagram, so this isn't really like a division or a wall. It's actually just a fold here. Do you see that? A fold in the body that just kind of gives a bit of a barrier between body sections. But so these two dark pink folds would represent this area here is one proglottid. So we see three visible in this diagram. This is part of one, this center one, and this one over here. They can be anywhere between 40 and 60 feet long. Proglottids are continually added, so that's how it grows. It just continues to add those proglottids. Sorry, my dog's playing with a toy. They are complete reproductive units. So each one of these proglottids is a sperm and egg factory and are capable of producing eggs. So you can imagine with hundreds of proglottids, they have hundreds of chances to lay eggs and reproduce. These guys can self-fertilize. They can, because think about it. They're solitary in a gut. They're never, ever going to meet one of their species unless, I guess on a rare occasion, a cow could get a second tapeworm, but still, they've evolved to self-fertilize. The older that the tapeworm is, the longer it is. Now, how do we get tapeworms? Oh, no. Well, it starts out by eating undercooked pork, and that pork is going to contain cysts, and the cooking process does not destroy the cysts. So the human ingests the poorly cooked pork, and the digestion actually frees that. It opens up the little cyst, the protective coat, and frees it. And it's a larval tapeworm, and it will attach into the intestine. Again, here's the scolex with the hooks and suckers that burrow into the intestinal wall, so it can't be passed out with waste material. The tapeworm will mature, and by that we mean it just continues to grow and add these proglottid body sections. The segments that are fertilized and full of eggs do pass out with human feces. They are shed from the posterior end of the worm. And then somehow, and I'm not saying that pigs go out and eat doo-doo. Their food gets contaminated. We're talking about like third world countries where people are going to the bathroom just out in the open, and sometimes it might, the pig might accidentally eat it. I guess it could happen on a farm because we do get them in America occasionally, but it's pretty rare. But anyways, that pig eats food that's been contaminated with those eggs. The eggs will hatch into a larva in the pig intestine, but then they migrate through the blood vessels to the muscle. In that muscle, they form these little cysts. And again, those cysts can only be killed through heating and freezing. Then that muscle becomes a sandwich, and it's under